Now that we've introduced Revit, we're now going to look at Revit 2014. So we're going to double click and we're going to give a quick brief demonstration of how its features and functionality can help you in your day-to-day workflow. You may have noticed that the icon's slightly different, so if you're familiar with Revit, it's actually changed this year as part of the 2014 products. All of the Autodesk products have had a facelift in their logos with these new Autodesk logo. So when we open it up, you're presented with projects and families. So if you're not familiar with it, this can perhaps seem a little bit daunting, and I thought I'd take this time now to quickly introduce you to it so you get a basic understanding. So here you have different templates. So if you're creating a construction template, an architectural template, a structural template, or a mechanical template, it sets this up correctly for you. So it takes you to the correct tab as like default, like the architectural tab at the very top left there. You can also see here some of the products, some of the projects that I've opened up recently. I've also got families. So families are a group of products that can all relate to each other. For instance, a group of windows varying in different sizes. So you can actually, as a company, upload all of your products to one of the online sites such as Autodesk Seek, and various different people, so architects and engineers, can download those products and implement them into their drawings and buildings and models. For instance, you can create a concept mass, so create an abstract view, perhaps a leaning tower, and then you can start adding in different doors, windows and sizes, and you can download different features such as furniture from Autodesk Seek or a bespoke steel door. You can also create your own, so any structure, so assembly. So if you have access to a 3D modelling program such as Inventor, you can actually model this up and export it out in a Revit format. So I'm now going to open this up and create a new project. I'm actually going to use a drop down and create an architectural template. And I'm now taken into the main window. So within Revit, if you're familiar with AutoCAD, you're used to working in several different workspaces. It's similar to that, but instead you have it all in your project browser. So you see here, I've got level 0 and level 1. So this is just a typical template. I've then got my ceiling views, I've got my 3D views, my elevation views, my legends, my schedules and quantities, my sheets, and my families and my groups. So they're all in there, all within one file. So everything, if you need a drawing, you go into your Revit project file and you can open up the drawing. Unless it's been exported, then it loses its link. You can also go across the tabs and look at structures, systems, annotations, mass and siting, collaboration, any managing, and these can all go along, and these all have their own features and functionality. The nice thing is, if you hover over one of the components, it gives you a quick AVI image of what this feature and functionality does. So it's very useful. So if you're not using it day in, day out, this kind of aids you with your workflow. So first of all, I'm just going to create an additional floor. So I'm just going to double click here. So it takes me just into here like this. And I've got my levels at the moment. So I'm just going to create a similar one. We'll put that there. So let's just put that like so. Call that level 2. And you can see it's added on there as well. So I can double click, and perhaps we want that to be 2.5. And again, if I wanted to add another floor, if I select level 2, create a similar, and build that up. And that's all part of its associativity. So you can see that it's all working in one plane. So on the left in my project browser, this is all constantly being updated. So I can either update it that way, or I can just put 2,500 and open it up that way. And it's also given me the overall height. So now if I close that back down, they're still there, and I can select different levels on which to work on. So this is handy when you're putting features such as walls, windows and everything in the correct place. I'm now going to go across to mass and siting. So this first part, I'm just going to show you how to create a rough mass, extrude it out, and add some features and functionality. And then I'm going to take you into a demonstration to show you an existing workflow of a full-size scale model. So I'm just going to select in place mass, and I'm going to call this build 1. So as you can see, it's taking me into a create tab. So this is allowing me to start to begin to create my rough mass. So I'm going to keep it very simple. You can see it's very parametric as well. So if I select these walls, I can start adding details to them. And I can also delete different features. So what I'm going to do now, you can see they also snap onto each other. And I can just move that down. I can delete that for a second. Let's go back. And we can just put it in a shape like so. I'm now going to go to my 3D view and add it like so. Select this, and I'm going to create a mass form. So you can see here I've created my 3D image. So I'm going to put this at 10 to 12. I missed the 0, so I can add that in, so I can just go back and change things. And I've now created a rough mass for my building. In doing so, I can select and I can start creating massed floors. So I can say, well, actually, I want all of these levels added onto my building. So now, if I rotate the model for you quickly, you can see I've got a mass of my wall quite quickly, and I can see exactly where we are. So if I was to go onto level 0, this would take me onto level 0. I can go into architecture, and I could add some walls. So let's put a wall down here. So now, if I go to my 3D view, you can see I'm building up that wall. If I go back to this wall and add the properties, you can see here, so it's unconnected, and I can do it up to level 3, and now that's going up to level 3. So that's the only place I want my wall. I'm just unsure at the moment where I want this to be, and this is just a rough idea to sketch it and get it into the correct position. I can then go in and go back to my level 0 and start adding in some functionality such as doors, just to give you a general idea of how this will look and how this works. So now if I go back to my 3D view, you can see here I've added in my walls, but I've quickly got a very quick concept of how this works, and this is part of the beauty of massing and siting. It just gives you an idea of functionality, and you can create rough ideas and rough models in which you can then develop and build on. So that's a general introduction into mass and siting. I'm now in the next part going to open up my example model and take you through that process of how it's been created. Now that we've introduced massing and site, we're now going to look at an example Revit project. The example Revit project that I'm going to use is a school. So was actually constructed a few years back, but what we're going to do is we're going to add some classrooms and some walls and a few doors and functionality into this first floor. So before we begin, if I select Tab WT, this will allow me to see all of the open windows that I have within Revit at the moment. So as mentioned, this is slightly different to AutoCAD and also other 3D packages where you have different separate components. You'd have a part, an assembly and a drawing. Within Revit, this is all in one area. So if you see on my project browser on the left, I have all of these functions and features such as 3D, visuals, elevations and sections. So if you have a look here now, I've got my floor plan, I have my elevation north, so So for instance, if I wanted to add a shadow, you can see I can select that on and instantly that's updated. So that's a 3D visual. You can go into different sketch views, different other like watermarked views, depending on what you want and what you're using. So this is very good if you're tendering for a project. We've also got our section views. So you can see here I can zoom in and have a look at any particular area. If I were to update this view, it would also update all of the other views where it's relevant. You can set these scales. This could be set as a particular scale. So if you are creating drawings, you can drag and drop these elevations. So if I go down to my project browser again, you can see here if I look for the SK section, you can see it's highlighted now, and that's what I'm working in. If I want to, I can pull that into a different view or drawing quite easily. And here I have another sheet view. So this is the final drawing that I'll be sending out as part of my drawing pack or my GA drawings. You can see I can zoom in. I've color coded it. So I've set this template up as a particular project. So each time I go back, I know that my colors and my sections and my layouts are always going to be the same. And here I've got my first floor window schedule. So this is just updated. It's live updated as and when, so I can export this out to Excel and send this out as a call off or quantities to the QS. So first of all, I'm now just going to open up, I'm just going to close a few of these windows. And again, let's just create this and split these drawings. So if I just zoom in so you can see this. So first of all, we're going to focus on this area. So we're going to start adding some walls and also some doors and windows and split the classrooms out. So we want 3 classrooms in this particular area. I'm going to go back to my architecture tab where I have my wall features, my doors and my windows. So if I select wall, you can see here this is part of the families that I mentioned earlier. If I drop down, part of the wall family, you have SM blocks, different cavities. So I've got probably about 25 loaded in here, some of which I've created and some of which have come as standard. So SM block 215 is the standard one that I've been using throughout this project. If I wanted to put a partitioning wall with perhaps a 120-minute fire rating on, I could do that. And I can go back at any time and edit these parts and see exactly what properties they have in them. This is also relevant for BIM because I can add different data such as fire rating, heat transfer, thermal resistance, any mass. So when I pass this on to different guys throughout the project, they have all this information to hand. And families are a good way of transferring this information. So let's just go back to my selected part. So I use my SM block. So I can now zoom in and I can start creating that block. So you can see here it's a simple drag and drop and I'm just sketching out exactly where I want this wall to be. And you can see if we zoom in, they've automatically joined and added to the existing walls. Now if I go to my sheet drawing, you can see it's also been added. So I haven't had to worry about making sure or duplicating this in any way. It's automatically detected it and picked it up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and select my wall again, and I'm just going to start splitting these walls up. As you can see, they're joining again. So I've got my rough, if you go wrong, select it, you can delete it and start again. You also notice if I select the walls, it comes up with the dimensions. So I actually know that this should be 2.5. You can see it's automatically resized that for me and taken into account all of the adjoining walls and features. So now if I go back to my architecture tab, I can go into my doors, and again I have access to families, so different types of doors. I can download these from Autodesk Seek, which is Autodesk online library. So if you are a door manufacturer or a window manufacturer, you can upload all of your models on here, so all of your families, different sizes, so that architects can come in and specify exactly what they want using your materials and products. So this means when it goes out to tender, you have a good chance of getting a price or getting your actual product out there. So if I put a door on here, again, I'm just going to put it in position. So you can see here it's snapping, so I can have whichever side I want. I can change this, so you can see I can just select the little functions there. And I can also change the way in which the door opens. So again, I'm just going to pop a few of these in here. So I'm now building it up, and all the time everything within the project's relating. So even if I've done any studies on the area, such as analysis or airflow or heat loss, this is all going to be updated and be kept relevant. I can now go in and start creating a section. So I'm just going to create a quick section there. Open up this box. And that's fine. Now if I go to my sections, so let that select, and we can open up that section. You can see I've got a live section, quickly updated. Gives you my section 1 and it's highlighted at the moment. So now if I go back and open up all my windows, again that's another section that I want to look at just to show the associativity. So I might want to put this on the drawing later on just to demonstrate perhaps there's a particular door or a particular unit. I can now go back to my architecture tab, and if I select this door, it brings up the properties. I can then go down and say I wanted a double door for this particular one, and you'll see it's automatically updated. This just shows the ease of function and how it's all relative throughout the project. Once we've done that, we're ready to look at the project in a bit more detail. We can then start adding room tags to it. So if I select a room tag and start segregating these rooms. So you see here, I can name this room. You can see like that. We'll call this classroom 1. The great thing about this is because I've set the template up, it's now all color coded and associative. So classroom 1 is green and it tells you the exact colors. Again, I can go on to each one and change that. So let's now just go back to here and start creating these rooms. So now if I go into here, we'll call this one Classroom 2, and you can see the colours automatically changed according to the template that I've set up earlier. So this could be great, this could be my company template that's set up so that everyone within the company is working off the same and you've got consistency throughout all of your projects. Again, I'm just going to go in here and change this one. Call this Classroom 3. And again, that's changed. So it's a great way to show and demonstrate your views. And if we go back now and we just revert down to that section that I created, if we wanted that within this project, we could simply drag it across and put it across. So you've got that very simply. It hasn't taken me any time. I haven't had to add any section details. I could open this section up and start adding more detail to it because this is quite basic at the moment, so I could have some further details such as dimensions and any heights or width that would be needed to in order to create the section and just make construction on site a lot easier. We've now looked at how to use Revit to create and manage and add families and data very quickly and easily. I've showed you how to add the doors and the windows and segment the corridors and add functionality and features to them. If we go in now, just to the top, what is very useful, so if I was to go and have a look in Classroom 1 as we're updated, it's also given us the area. So this is all part of the setup. It's created the classroom areas for each one and rounded that off, which is a great feature. So if I was to go into here, you can see it on the left hand side, and it's also just rounded that off to the nearest whole number, as that's what I've set in my templates. So now that we've done this, we want to start creating some visuals. So we want to demonstrate this and show how it's actually been created. So I'm just going to go back to my 3D view and have a look at all of my site. So this is a good example to show where I've used the mass sighting at the very beginning, just to get a feel for the area and it's the building and the surrounding areas. So I don't necessarily want to build all of these. It could be a phased project where I know that there's several layers and several areas that need to be built later on, perhaps over a few years, and I just want to demonstrate it and just get a mass so I can see how the building itself fits into the surrounding areas. So here we have the school and its completion, and I've also saved several sections. So if we go into here, you can see we have a section of the school, so I've taken cut out sections. So these are your isometric images that you can save out as JPEGs or videos and send them to your customer, or put them on tender drawings, or even just along the critical path, add this out and save it across. So here you can see, you can just add a few dimensions, turn the sun path on, you can see exactly how that works. We can also go into the 3D view cube so I can see different areas from within the project. And these can be very basic, down to sketches, and you can change the texture depending on your requirements. Or perhaps if you have a meeting room, or you want to justify something with a client or justify additional spend, it's very good to show it that way. So if I move down now, so we've gone through some of the sections and also looked at the drawing sheets. So here I've got my GA drawings and scale them to each one, and I can add at any point any sections. And add that to the drawing. So you can see it's as simple as that. It's plug and play, it's very straightforward, and you're just utilising, again, reusing that data that you've created along the way. I've also got some schedules and quantities. So these are great, so if you're a facilities manager and you want to see how many door handles, or you actually want to go back and use this later on in life. So if you have just built a block of flats, one of the door handle breaks, you know that if you go to your schedule, you can find out exactly where that door handle has been made, manufactured and bought from. And this is again part of the BIM data, so adding all of that data is all relevant and you can use that later on. And this is easily done, so if I now go back up, and I'm just going to pull out a new schedule. So we'll call this a schedule and quantities. And you can add as many different fields as you want. So if you're just looking for particular parts, so I'm just going to add all of them at the moment. Press OK. As you can see, this has built up everything. So I've got all of my frame thickness, my keynotes, my manufacturer, so you can see where it's all been created, and any other data. So it's so easily available. As you can see, it's literally taken me a click of the button. I have all of this data readily available that I could then export out into an Excel sheet and pass it on to the relevant parties. It's also created this for me, so a multi-category schedule. So this has actually added this. So every time I create this, I can revert back to it as it saves it for me. I don't need to keep on going and saving this out and setting my material quantity or schedules each time. They can be reused. I'm now going to go back and I'm going to look at some renderings. So this is a very important part, and it's a nice feature of Revit that you can actually start creating these high-end visuals. So here you can see 150 dpi, very nice image. Took me about 2 minutes to render. We're then going into another 150, but I've spent 4 minutes on the render this time. And as you can see, it's starting to sharpen up a little bit. You can see that the shadows are very nice. We've then got, and I've won this, so this took me 12 minutes. I'm just going to give you an idea of the sort of time that you can create and you can assign to it when you're rendering. So you can see again it's sharpening up, you've got a bit more texture, you can see more definition in the bricks. This one's slightly longer, but it's 145 minutes, and again it's the walls are a lot crisper, you can see the definitive lines. And then a 4-hour one. So kind of what you give to it, what you put in, is what you can. You can also use the cloud to render, so this could save you time and also free up your PC so you're not having to lock your PC and not being able to work. I've also added in some characters here, so they look like country folk, but it shows you how you can actually build this up and make it look like a real life scenario. So if we go all the way back to our mass siting where we were just kind of creating a rough concept, pulling up some walls, you can see how quickly you can add this on, adding staircases, rails, windows, all from the families that have already been created. I've also got some examples again of the cloud rendering. So I think these are great. You can see how, because it's taken out into the cloud, it's used more processors, and it's also bouncing the light down the bottom here. So at the back of the back doors, you can see there's more light, and it's also added underneath the stairs some depth of field to that. And that was a 16-minute render. This is a 42-second render, but I'm sure you agree it's almost up there with the likes of the 145-minute PC renderings. So these are some of the benefits of the cloud itself. I've also created some stylized views, so just some stylized views that you can see rough rendered, so that they've been rendered by an artist, and some sketching views. So again, it's allowing you to kind of trick people. If you wanted to show a rough sketch view, then it's quite possible to do so. Now that we've created our drawing and our new extensions to the school, we now want to document a drawing. So we want to pull together all of the quantity layouts and schedules that we've created, and also the rendered images, and we want to create this into a drawing that we can present and add to our tender pack. So in order to do this, I'm going to go to my project browser, scroll down, and I'm going to go to my sheets. You can see they've all been numbered. I'm going to create a new sheet, and we're going to add this in here. So you can see it's automatically added, and it's automatically picked up a numbering scheme because this is the way I've set my project up. So this is sheet A112. So it's an A1 sheet that I can now start creating and adding all of the data that I've just been creating to show. So first of all, I'm going to go back and I'm going to pick up the first floor. I'm just going to start putting that into position. So you can see I've popped that in. If I wanted to change the scale, I could go up and I could put that to 100, and that would automatically rescale the drawing within my plane. I'm going to leave it at 200 because I want to add quite a bit more detail onto this A1 sheet, and it's such a large sheet that it can warrant being that size. And if you notice, it's got the scale, so anyone picking up dimensions or looking at the drawing, if it's on construction, then they can actually see exactly what scale it is, so they know how to interpret the dimensions. We can also go back down, so further down now. I'm just going to go and see what I need to add. So also that section that I created of the new doors, I'm going to pop that in position. Again, I can change any scale that I want to, so I could put that up to 200. And that would automatically update. But perhaps that's a little bit too small, and I'm going to leave it at the 100. I can now go to my visualizations that I created earlier. So I can go down, have a look at my different views. So I'm going to perhaps put the best cloud render on. So I'm going to drag that across. And you notice also it snaps, so it's all in line. So when you're in a 3D software, usually when you're laying out drawings and you're projecting them, they're all linked associatively. These aren't linked, but they automatically snap in the correct position. So you can now see that. And I can also go down and have a look and perhaps pick out one of my schedules that I created. So I put the room list on there. And also if I wanted to put my door legend in there, so I can see exactly which doors are used through the project. So this is great if you just wanted to create a legend just to show exactly what size they are. So if there's different variants that are varying only slightly by certain dimensions, so you can see here you've got the 1810 by the 1880, only slight variants, so you just make sure if you show it this way that when it gets to site this is added in the correct position. You've also got your title block down here at the bottom, so you can add all your author, who it's checked by, the project number, and any other details or fields that you feel you need to add to your project. But then this is completed, and then you can save this out and print this drawing out. So you can go through. You can also duplicate drawings if you wanted to make slight amendments to them, so it'll save you having to go through and actually manually create them each time. And that's a complete overview of how you can take a short design and implement it into a project and then create the drawings in which you can send out. So now if I were to go back to this initial drawing and throughout later on in the project I've had word that I need to change some parts, so perhaps this wall is in the wrong position. So I'm just going to move this down slightly, bearing in mind that I'd set all the masses up and all the classroom details, so I can now go back to some of my drawings that I've created. This has all been updated, and if you remember when we looked at the mass for that particular area, so if we go to classroom 2, the mass will automatically be updated accordingly and justify itself. So I've made a design change. I can also go back again and add a link door. So this will also go back and it will change the schedule and also the door schemes. Go back to my new drawing. It's all been updated. All the doors and the uses are there. So I now know this associativity is all up to date. I haven't had to worry about going through and updating however many drawings this will affect, because every one I go to is now up to date. So it saves you a lot of time if you can think back to using AutoCAD, where you have to make sure, and it also takes a lot of discipline to know exactly where this is. So if you picked up this project or you've taken over a project, you are rest assured that if you're controlling the main model, that everything is updated and everything is relative and in the correct position. So that's a general introduction to Revit. If you have any further questions, I'm now available to answer any of these questions. Thank you for your time.